So we've got
Ya pues, qué bárbaro. This is not going in. Why? Gotta put this on mute. Did you get them all? There's there should be 5.
Yep.
Did you get all 5?
Looks like it. 3 are PDFs, 2 are PowerPoints. Yep, all set.
When do we start? Now.
Now.
Oh, we have 3 and meet echo. Is it for her? Okay. When you're ready, I get the button. Max, the button. Yeah, but yeah. Is it in presentation mode?
We can do that, I think.
Shall we go?
Yep.
All right. Good mid-morning, everyone. We are at the home stretch. Last session, we've got 4 presentations, so if we keep it in time, we can maybe get out early. So next slide, please. So Takeshi, my co-chair, is on Meet Echo, but I've asked David to help me here since I can't run multiple machines here. So thank you, David. With that said, I'm not going to read through the note well. You guys should know that well by now. Pun intended, huh?
We already agreed to it when we signed up for the meeting.
There you go. Kind of, sort of. Okay, so quick agenda bash. This is what we have now. We're going to be providing you status on the current drafts that we have active. I'll give you the brief status on the working group overall. Thank you, Takeshi, for providing the slides for that. One quick change. Mio-san has an early flight to take. So for the presenters, if you guys are okay, I would like to put him after the mile status, and then we'll continue on the same order. Is that okay with everybody? Great. Okay. So quick status for the working group. Next slide, please. You were doing great. Okay. So this is basically the representation of what this work group is doing. Hopefully you guys all know this. I'm trying to breeze through this really quick, so stop me if I need to do further explanation, but it lays out the work that we're trying to do. The red is the current drafts that we're working on. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, to reiterate, these are the current working active drafts. We'll be providing an update. We expect the progression, and I think that's on the next slide, next slide, please, of what we'd like to do. So with respect to the schedule, There should be the implementation report to be published as an RFC. I think that one has already been shepherded by Take. Thank you. I'm the shepherd for the ROLIE draft. So if we can get the updates to the draft, we can get that going and try to strive to get that done by the December timeframe. So hopefully by the next IETF, which is 98, we should be ready to do a last call for the guidance draft. I think we're going to hear updates for the ROLIE draft. There's still a couple of issues that need to be resolved. So Kathleen, we're going to do another last call for that draft, just to make sure. We'd like to solicit more feedback, give Stephen a chance to update the draft. So that's by 98. Same thing with the XMPP grid. So I'll provide an update there. And then by the next next meeting, we should be ready to do a last call for the IODEF guidance draft. And I think and the
CSIRT.
The CSIRT ROLIE draft. Okay.
One question, actually. On
Yes.
the ROLIE CSIRT draft, that's still a personal draft, so that needs to be adopted at some point if our plan is.
Yeah, so we should do a consensus call here, and then I'll take it to the reflector. So I guess I forgot one point of order. I want to thank Stephen for jabber scribing and Danny for doing minute taking. I was looking at you, Chris, but you got lucky. You weren't at the breakfast this morning. In the interest of time, I was volunteering people before the meeting so we could just go through it quickly. Okay, so that said, I think we're ready.
That's it.
To go on to, so
This is, it's implementation.
it's the guidance draft. Yes.
Okay, so it is that.
So, Mio-san?
I will present the status of the guidance draft. Next. Here's the overview of this draft. This draft aims to provide a guideline for IODEF usage, and it includes representation of common security indicators and also use cases so far. I will show the updates from previous draft. Sorry. And then show to-do list. Next, please. This is update from the previous draft. First, we modified the examples in appendix to follow IODEF v2 schema. Currently, there's 4 examples in this draft, and A1, malware and related indicators, and A2, malware delivery URLs, A3, and DDoS traffic, and finally, A4, the spear phishing email with malware attachment. These all examples have passed the IODEF v2 schema, but I don't have much confidence about the contextual correctness. So if you have time, please could you check the contextuality of examples. Next slide.
You can use this.
Yeah, thank you. And the remaining to-do lists are only review, I think. Is that correct? And could you please give me all sorts of comments or feedbacks? Thank you.
Thank you. So should we ask? So Mio-san, would you like more feedback then on the review? You've gotten some,
Yes.
but you need more.
Yeah.
So we'll ask also on the mail reflector, but could we get volunteers to help review the draft? Thanks, Chris. Thanks,
Thank
Roman. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, Stephen. It's the, you should know. Would you like?
Yes.
Oh,
Where's the button?
I have the button. Would you like the button?
No, it's quite all right.
Hello.
Takeshi, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, it's very soft.
Can you hear me or not? Can you?
Hold on, we can barely hear you. I don't know if there's a sound.
I don't know if there's a way to turn it up or not.
Give us 1 second. We're
Meet Echo to the rescue.
Can you speak, Takeshi?
Hello, can you hear me?
It's
better.
getting better.
Thank you. So let me just talk a bit more about his status. Mio and Hanosu was talking about the schedule, and they think they are already done what they did about the draft. So if possible, we would like to make sure that we are happy to initiate working group last call before the next meeting. So could chairs ask audience whether we can initiate working group last call before the next meeting?
Okay. So Takeshi, I did ask for a couple of people, and Roman and Chris agreed to review. So I guess given that, the first question I should ask is how many people in the room have actually read this version? Yeah. Yes.
One.
Oh, you read the guy?
Well,
No,
I mean,
we're talking about the guidance draft.
that was. I mean, he uploaded that You updated a few days ago. No, I haven't read
Okay.
that version.
So Takeshi, what I'd like to do is get some feedback. So Chris and Roman, and then in the email, we'll do the question of whether we believe the draft. We'll do a consensus call on the email to ask if the group believes this is ready for a last call.
Thank you very
Okay?
much. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, Stephen.
All right.
The button?
Yeah. I'm Stephen Banghart with NIST, and Dave Oltemeyer may jump in a few times to help me out with a few things as well. So I want to talk to you guys about some of the major changes that we've made in the last 2 draft updates to ROLIE so that everyone's up to date, as well as covered like the major review questions and issues that we have left to cover until we do the working group last call and get this thing finished up. So first of all, it's a little bit of a wall of text, but we're going to try and just go through it as concisely as we can. These are the major changes that have happened in the 04 update of the draft from 03. We did a decent amount of work in the front matter of the document in the background and motivation section, which was quite lengthy, and we boiled it down with the same kind of intent, but just in a way that's a little bit more concise. One of the major changes we made was we combined authentication and authorization and more or less moved all the normative requirements out of the document. And we are intending to create a separate document that will contain the requirements for authentication and authorization. The TLS requirements that were originally in ROLIE were iterated and expanded based on the TLS requirements from RFC 7589. They had a TLS requirements section that had a format that was a useful template for us. The / resource requirements were expanded as to what the expected responses are for sending requests to the / operator. The actual response codes are now set normatively. The link relationships were basically centralized and moved into a more sensical kind of place, all in one place, and everything else references this section. That should make it a little bit more clearer and make it a little bit easier for reference. We want the document to be referenceable as you're working on it, to be able to just pull it up, click the link at the top, and see where all these things are. So now there's one table for all that. The ROLIE format element is defined, which is a new element that's an extension to ATOM syndication. And ROLIE format holds information about the data format of the content. The actual schema and definition for that was added in this version. The search requirements, just like authentication and authorization, the normative search requirements were removed. That is intended to be added in a separate ROLIE search draft, if you will, at a later date, as that was deemed out of scope for the core document. The extension points, ROLIE format being one of them. The several other extension points like category and link relations, those extension points are described in much greater detail at the end of the document. There's a whole section that describes how to use those extension points and what they actually accomplish. And the IANA registration section, which was unfinished, it was all to-do'd, and in the 03 version was completed and filled out, and all those registrations should now be complete for establishing all the IANA tables that we use for extensions. And then as I mentioned earlier, the actual schema was added for ROLIE format. So this was the 04 version, which was a lot of major normative changes. Not too long after 04, we did an 05 version that contained a few more changes that we wanted to get in before this meeting. We expanded the terminology section at the beginning of the document in order to define all of our ROLIE specific terminology in one place instead of defining it throughout the document. The AtomPub category document is a document that allows for a centralized location of all the categories that a ROLIE server provides. That was originally not required. We decided that it was valuable for a server to basically report on all the categories that it provides. So we added that in as a requirement. Now there's a standardized location. A client can come and get the category document and instantly know what the given ROLIE server actually, what information types and categories it provides. It's a normative requirement now. General editing, trying to make things as clear and concise as possible so that the document is as useful to implementers as possible, and just gets right to the meat of it. The format parameter type was in 04 for the IANA registration. That is not being registered in the IANA section, so that was just extraneous text that was removed. And the 04 version contained like a 35-page RelaxNG schema that included all of ATOM syndication and all of AtomPub, and that was unnecessary. So we removed the full schema and now only include the relevant pieces of the schema that have actually changed throughout the document. It makes it a lot shorter, easier to print out. You don't have to print out the whole thing. So that is a summary of the major changes that we made in the 04 and 05 versions, which is the document's current version. We have a few changes pending in the GitHub that for a planned 06 version, but they're almost entirely editing, clarity, those kind of small edits, nothing really of note. So with that, there are a few things left that we need to do to get this done. These 3 review questions that we have up here are less of an outstanding issue and more of things that need to get reviewed before we push this out. Hopefully these will be answered by people reviewing the document. So if you do review, keep an eye out for these things. Our normative and informative references we need to check and make sure that the references are actually in the place that they belong, whether they're informative or normative. The XML snippets and examples, we have tried very hard to keep those up to date as the document requirements have changed, but we would like those to be validated against the ROLIE schema. Hopefully, in the future, we can build a validator or just use some kind of validation to actually make sure that our examples are fully valid. That's the hope there. And this is a question that we hope that there are people here in the room or in the mailing list or in MILE in general that can help us with the security side of things. We have TLS requirements and we have a security consideration section. We need some people who are knowledgeable about those things to read through, some experts in TLS or just in the HTTP security in general, and give us feedback on those security sections and let us know if this is what you expect. So with that, we do have a few substantive issues that we need to talk about in the group. So this is the first issue, and this is one that came to light while we were working on the CSIRT extension document. There are identifying and characterizing properties of data formats that don't belong in our current extension points. So we have link relations, we have categories. For example, an IODEF ID is a really important property that could be useful for somebody trying to get information off of a ROLIE server to say, get me this IODEF ID. The only way for them to get that is to actually download the content and then search it. If there was some way of arbitrarily exposing these very important attributes out of a data model, out of the attached content, that could save a ton of time for people trying to search. So there are a couple options to trying to solve this problem, and we have some examples for each and a proposal for each. So the first option is to create a new extension point, ROLIE property, which is a fairly free-form property that is constrained in ways to make it reasonable and as safe as possible, but that is otherwise fairly unrestrictive, that would allow the exposure of these important elements for whoever may need them. And then register those properties so that they're tracked and understood. So that, for example, the CSIRT extension document may register in an IANA table ID and maybe date, which are two important attributes of an IODEF document that are not exposable in any other way. The second option is to basically require any time that you want to do that, just it has to be a local definition instead. Some kind of locally namespaced IODEF element that you add in just to expose that information. So here are two examples of option 1 and option 2. Use the laser pointer, this thing's pretty cool. So option 1 here, this is the relevant section. There's an actual ROLIE property element with a scheme. So ROLIE CSIRT IODEF, this is a scheme that would be established by the extension document. So ROLIE CSIRT would establish this scheme. And that scheme contains a number of names. And in that document that defines those, it defines the actual semantic meaning of this information, and then the actual data goes in the content of the tag. So if I wanted to expose the IODEF ID that way, this is what that might look like. And again, for date. And there's contents, there's elements elided from here. There would be a content here where the IODEF actually is. But so this would allow you to get to IODEF ID and IODEF date without having to download the IODEF document, which is good. This is the option 2. These are locally defined namespaces, which are shorter in element name, but there are a lot of compatibility issues because these are just locally defined, so there's not really any way of easily communicating that to a public distribution, which is what ROLIE, one of ROLIE's major use cases is this public distribution use case. And if everything's locally defined, doesn't really mean anything, and ROLIE is going to just ignore those fields in most of the cases. So, so option 1 and option 2. I have a little ribbon on here that says I don't know what I'm doing. Is this the time that we might call for option 1 or option 2? What are people feeling about this? Do we call for consensus now on this issue?
No, you just get opinions.
Opinions.
We take
Are there
it
any
from them.
strong opinions, one way or another, between option 1 and option 2? We could
I haven't
hum.
asked for a hum.
I have not had a hum the whole week I've been here. It's very disappointing.
Okay, well, we'll let you. We'll let you do a hum. Just
We'll do some trivial hum at the end of this whole thing, just to make me happy. Thank you, Adam.
it is the last session of the last day.
It's true.
Right, Adam on
Adam.
CIS. I just have a question about option 1.
Uh-huh.
So, like, ROLIE is something that CIS is interested in, but not necessarily exclusively for public broadcast of things.
Yes.
So the option 2 is okay for us in a lot of cases.
So
Because we have this closed environment.
So Adam, as a
Identify yourself.
Dave Waltermeyer, as a contributor, I think the difference really between option 1 and option 2 is focused around, we have these namespaces for which these additional properties are going to, fit within. Do we want to have a controlled process for adding new namespaces in ROLIE through an IANA registration so that we could manage the namespace of namespaces essentially, or do we want to allow arbitrary use of arbitrary namespaces by implementation or by other drafts?
It wouldn't preclude it.
Okay.
Is the important thing here. Basically, Adam allows for you to put on any elements that you could possibly want any of the time, and it's not going to fail validation.
Right.
If you send that to somebody who doesn't understand what that is, it just ignores the element and moves on.
Right.
So it does not preclude
So
your use case at all.
I like option 1,
Yeah.
but I also like the idea of being able to do something privately.
If you pick
That
option
doesn't require
1,
me to go out to IANA and do all the other stuff.
you could still do option 2.
Semantic
Yeah.
definition. So this is Nancy Camwinget as an individual contributor. So I'm trying to understand the differences of how I would define it from a general term.
Okay.
And so to me, option 1 gives you the ability to dynamically create a new property and define through that schema the semantic intent behind that property.
Yes.
So beyond the IANA registration in option 2, my question to you is, it seems like as you register these I'll look at this way. So for option 2, when new properties are exposed, not only does it go through the IANA process, but there has to be an understanding of what that namespace and schema would look like.
Right.
Is-
Option 1 is the IANA.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Or-
technically, we could
Yeah,
probably work it so that we could do an IANA registry for either. Another value of option 2 is that you can do schema validation based on option 2.
You mean option 1?
Did I just?
Option
what
1
you
is
were
the
gonna say?
IANA.
Half of what I would said.
You need to follow the cue.
Yes.
Okay.
And the schema validation thing, that also came up as a lot of feedback when we did IODEF v2.
Right. Yeah. So option 1 is the one with the IANA table registrations. So that is the one that would let you do that. Okay, Hank.
Sorry,
Yeah.
side discussion. This is Hank Burkholz from the Fraunhofer. First of all, Adam, you can do your own stuff with option 1 quite well by just not publishing it. So yeah, so that's the first point, I think. Also, distributing schema seems to be a thing for ROLIE. So if you want to have consistent semantics with consumers and providers of this information, you probably need at least, of course, the registrations thingy, but also a distribution of schema, which is also, if you scale big, sometimes a problem. I don't know how you think this will evolve in regard to versions and additional namespaces, but this can, as with every XSD XML-ish thing, be a big hassle at some point. So if you do not really require versioning, but are pretty confident that you are stable, for the sake of simplicity, option 2 is actually more like things I've done now. But if you're a little more traditional, you want to have this rollout of XSDs and this consistencies and versions, and you want to do it very, traditionally and strongly defined, I rather recommend option 1. depends on the overall strategy MILE and ROLIE in combination have. And if the option 2 is the way more flexible one, then you don't have to battle all the schema version battles.
Right. Well, you can still do option 2 with option 1 selected, so it doesn't restrict you.
If you say in the draft do option 1 and you can option 2, doing option 2 is basically messing it up. So then I would say I would decide for one of, but not for both.
Right. It would support the private use case, which is half of the ROLIE use case. So public, private. Roman?
So, Roman Janilio, CSIRT. My misunderstanding is there a third option, which is option 1 and 2 at the same time?
So.
Okay. I only asked because I feel like we went through that discussion back when we were talking at least about IODEF, that we want both classes of them, and that was a bit of discussion. So I'm wondering why we wouldn't want to do that here.
So you would support this option 3 that's both of them?
I'm putting it on the table.
Okay.
I can see the value for extensibility.
Okay.
Future.
So, sorry, this is Adam for Taki on Jabber. He says, I wonder whether we can use the combined approach.
Okay.
Roman says, I like the way how IODEF version 1 allows to use IANA and private extensions.
Okay.
That sounds like, Dave Waltmeyer, that sounds like 2+1s for option 3, which is to support both option 1 and option 2.
Well, so let's finish the queue and then we'll allow for the hum. Okay. So you. Well, he needs to experience the hum.
Indeed. Yeah, I want to support that as well. I'm thinking about it more after this conversation.
Yeah.
All right. So let's do the hums and with full puns. Option 1 is to do the IANA registry through the creation, as you've listed there. Option 2 is what you've listed there. And option 3 is to merge the two, to allow for both. Correct? I think that's what I heard. Okay, so this is going to be interesting. Could I get a hum for option 1? Go ahead.
No, I just don't want to be nested near loud hummers.
Oh, that's right. Okay, those for option 1, could you please hum? Oh, okay. Those for option 2, could you please hum? Okay, I hear about one hum. Okay, those for option 3, please hum. I think it's pretty clear. So,
Okay.
thank you. Okay, so Danny, you've captured that in the notes. Okay, so we'll reflect that in the minutes.
Perfect.
And then I'll take it to the mail.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
you can get direction.
All right.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So that is one of our issues. All these issues are on GitHub, by the way, including the review questions that were earlier. So if you want to come comment or look at them, they're all on GitHub too. Okay. Here we go. So issue number 2. So we have talked about this before briefly, but we want to get some more final discussion in on it as we approach the deadline of this document in general. So data model enumeration / registration. The concept here is right now, the ROLIE format element describes the data model of the content. The question is, should that be registered at the time when you write your extension document that talks about the information type? So there are some pros and cons of doing this data model registration or data model enumeration. It does provide a registered location for these. It would be like a namespace for IODEF would define it. The content is IODEF. You put it in ROLIE format, it's defined in the table. So it does provide this kind of centralized location for all these officially supported data formats. However, it requires the extension document writers to actually just pick a namespace for their data models, which might not mean anything to anybody else, right? So even if you register a given namespace for a data model and you publicly distribute that Atom entry or ROLIE entry out to the world, and everybody gets this ROLIE format element and it says, oh, I'm a IODEF, that may not actually mean anything to the client who receives that. So it is basically a question of, does it provide value to require the extension document authors to register those data formats? So we have Dave going up to the mic.
Dave Woltermeyer. So this was driven by some feedback that we got at the last face-to-face at IETF 96. And we started actually working on doing this, implementing some kind of IANA registry for registering the formats that are used, within ROLIE. And we quickly started to realize that we were creating a whole bunch of work for every extension author that they would have to do in order to, to use a data model within an extension. And the more work we started realizing that we were creating, the more we actually got scared about the fact that we were creating all of this work, because we want to try to make it as easy as possible to create a ROLIE extension, because we want to see lots of ROLIE extensions, be generated. So this is really just about an abundance of caution to not make it too difficult for creating new extensions. What this effectively allows is for extensions to define what data formats are allowed, but doesn't require those formats to be registered in an IANA registry. So you don't have to write a whole bunch of IANA considerations in order to create an extension. We feel like that's a good balance between being explicit in what's allowed, but not being too formal in how it's being registered. So we're kind of looking for permission to move forward with that set point, or we'd like to hear any other considerations that might take us one direction or another.
So Roman Dinu CERT, I just want to make sure I understand it. So what we're talking about is documenting the extension, but not registering it. So no like you just said, no IANA considerations.
That's right. The extension document can still discuss or even talk about the different data models that might be reasonable to use for that information type and talk about how they might be used, but to not register them in an IANA table.
So how is that different than option 2, but you chose to make a draft?
Yeah, I mean, so as the chair, I guess the question, I'm going to look at Kathleen since I'm a total noob. When you say document, are you saying it would be an IETF document? Like we'd have to go through the RFC process?
No. So this is all about the format extension. So there's the format element contains a namespace attribute that defines the namespace of the referenced content by the ROLIE entry. It can also contain pointers to a schema location where, for that namespace, a media type for the schema, and a bunch of other things like that. So what this is actually about is the namespace that's used in that ROLIE format entry, does that have to be registered in some specialized IANA table, for the ROLIE format element? That's what the question is. And that namespace then would represent the model of the content that's being referenced by the given Atom Pub entry. In this case, yes.
Adam Montville, CIS. Has anybody in this room read the SACM draft? It's a ROLIE extension draft for software identifiers, I think.
And the CSIRT extension in this mile too.
Right, so it's got a format in there, right? So you could look at that draft and see an example of what we're talking about if you haven't looked at that.
Yeah, and in the CSIRT document, we actually have some slides about the CSIRT document at the end of this presentation.
Right, but as you're pointing out, Adam, it's an IETF draft. It's a document.
The ROLIE extensions are IETF documents, yes, that register information types, because information type is one of the category extension points. Those are registered in an IANA table through an RFC, through an IETF document. So the information types, which are really what almost presumably all of the extension documents are going to be, the idea here is I can say, this is my information type. Here are some data formats that are reasonable for my information type. That's kind of the planned extension format, which is exactly what the CSIRT extension does. It says, we talk about incident and indicator. For example, IODEF can do these things. Sticks can do these things. X can do these things. We talk about the data formats. So that's what's happening now in an IETF document, yeah.
Right, sorry, Adam Otwell again. So I'm in the middle of writing, I haven't yet submitted a checklist extension to ROLIE, so for configuration checklist.
Yeah.
And it'll probably list in there a format of XCCDF perhaps.
That's right.
But I don't necessarily want to have to, I think I agree with this, wherever you are, there you are. I don't necessarily want to have to go and register that format.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right, that's the intent.
So Dave Waltermeyer, would it be helpful if we sent an example of these options to the list to further clarify this, or do we feel like we have a good enough understanding here to make a choice?
So the question on the table is, do you guys understand what's being asked? Sorry, you know.
Chris Anasio, CSIRT. I think an example would be helpful, but I actually do think I understand what's being asked, but it's not clear to me what. So the thing, we're mired in the technicalities of what we're doing, but I don't necessarily fully appreciate the impacts. So I get it. You know, you want to make an extension, you don't have to do an IANA registry. Okay. Or we could have private extensions that don't have IANA registries. It's not clear to me that even if you say in the ROLIE draft you have to have an IANA, you know, you have to do that. The people actually have to do that. They can always not bother. So, I mean, you can state must all you want, but implementations don't really have to comply with that. So it seems to me the more realistic question is there some kind of way to slice namespaces to say that these are registered and registered versus not?
Dave Waltermeyer. Well, namespaces are URI, so URIs can be, you know, can handle that namespacing, you know, within the identifier.
Right, and so you know, I would state, this seems like a fruitless argument unless you're going to say something like we're going to, you know, make sure that we have namespace that says it's, you know, IANA ROLIE or something like that.
Right. Well, I think that's why the argument really is to IANA register or not to IANA register. Yeah, really.
Yeah. Okay, so
no, I want to make a comment to exactly that.
And I will cut you off after that.
Okay.
Make your comment.
Because you do register. I just heard from the context here the information type.
Yes.
For each extension. So
That's
every
right.
new draft will go through the IANA registration process by registering the information type. You just want to avoid have specific data formats tied to that registration. So
Yes.
I think it is misleading to say we are voting on not registering or registering something because we're already registering something. You don't want to go into more detail for the format, which I understand.
Yes,
So
we're
this is
reducing
just
the registration
to,
level. Yeah.
clarify the question.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
so
this question is way more easier to answer, I think, than the question that is stated there.
IANA, like, just, can you actually do that? Can you register something in the IANA registry that, you know, presumably using a document, or are we doing expert review? I don't know which.
it doesn't matter.
Can you
yeah.
register it and then reference something to which there's no reference? Is that so?
Which the,
So
It would. Can I answer that question?
yes, and then you guys listen to me. You're done, okay?
So the registry would be specification required, so the document making the registry would be the reference.
Okay, so my suggestion is a clarification should get made. An example should be provided, if you could provide it to the mail list so that we can move this along, right? Because we'd like to hit the December deadline. So if you can provide an example of what that means and try to provide your perspective of the implications, I think that will help address Chris's points, right? He kind of understands it, but doesn't quite see the full impact. I think that would help.
Yeah, we can put together something that expresses that.
Yeah. Okay. So just FYI, you're only in slide 7 of 16.
Yes.
So we got to move this along a little
here's
quicker.
what I will do because of this time issue. We have a number of issues. We'll bring those to list. I think is the best way to handle the remaining issues. And I'm going to go and give the brief talk about just a couple minutes about the CSIRT extension document that was recently published.
It may be good. I mean, I didn't mean to, because we've got time.
Okay.
But there's 2 more presentations after you.
Okay.
So how about I give you like 10 more minutes?
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. We just.
Okay.
Okay. So the last couple issues are a little bit easier, actually. ROLIE's current status is informational. There are many normative references in ROLIE. So we would like to switch it to a standards track document. So our proposal is we switch it to a standards track document. Is there any strong opinion opposing that?
You get to do another hum. Okay. So we could ask the question, and then again, we'll take it back to the mail group, right? So the question on the table is
It's
informational.
It was informational when we picked it up.
Do you agree that the ROLIE draft should be made standards track as opposed to informational? Can we do?
Experimental, standards track, or informational?
We can do that. You're the AD?
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be good, because if there aren't many implementations of it.
Oh, then we can do experimental.
And then you still have a chance to do standards track after that.
Okay. So let's start with,
I'd say experimental.
okay, so experimental versus information.
Are there going to be, well, so kind of how many implementations are there?
How many
I'm
implementations are
aware.
there? Well,
We're writing one, and someone else.
oh, there's 3. So,
All right, so let's do the poll. You can.
okay, so I'm going to do, yes.
I already got 1 hum.
So-
if we don't want to do any more hums, that's okay. That's all right.
Okay,
not gonna be
let me
heartbroken.
run the meeting, please. So those who believe this should be an experimental draft, please hum. Well, there you go. Those who believe this should be a standards track draft, please hum. Okay, so I think we have our, so we'll, yeah.
Okay, done with that one. Cool. So these 2 issues are very closely related, so I'll just go over them both. We have to do it separately. So service documents are really, really important to the operation of ROLIE. You use the service document to discover what feeds you have available and the resource locations of all of those feeds. So if you can't find the service document, you can't find the feeds, and you're out of luck. So right now, the standardized location of the service document is a should requirement in ROLIE. We would like to change that to a must requirement so that that standardized location allows any kind of client to actually discover what's on the server reliably. Without this, it is going to be very hard for a client to discover what feeds are available.
Hello, Alexei Melnikov. Why don't you use .well-known?
.10?
Well-known.
Oh, well-known.
Because there is another HTTP RFC saying that hard-coded URLs are bad thing unless they're .well-known, basically.
Well, it's only partly hard-coded. I mean, it's based off the server root.
Well, still.
Okay. I think a well-known location, you're still going to run into some of the same problems, right? It has to be advertised somewhere. Like I'd have to be able to get that off some kind of known location at some point, or else you're not going to be able to find the service document.
No. There is a on web servers there is dot well dash known as is reserved prefix, and under it you can have different types of documents, and for that there is an IAN registry. So you go there.
Okay.
So
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
So just to Dave Altemeyer, just to clarify, Alexei, this is a template. So the URL template, because the idea is that every organization that stands up their own ROLIE repository would implement this template, providing a well-known location for that server to discover the resource collections that are published by the server. So our intent is not to provide a single global well-known location, but to allow each server to have a well-known location.
Fine.
So that way a client would only have to know that location and the name of, or the service name, and it could basically go find it.
how does the client find out the location?
It has to know the host, which is a problem out of scope for this document.
Service record or something.
So no discovery.
No host discovery. But as soon as you know a host, you can find a ROLIE server there. So, but host discovery is out of scope for this document. If there's room for a kind of host discovery type thing, then that would be in a separate document, I think. But once you have a host or a list of hosts, you can check them all for ROLIE servers if this is a must requirement.
I don't want to be a bottleneck, but I think we need to have a discussion on this.
That's valuable
I
input.
need to get involved people from HTTP that might object later on if you do the wrong thing.
Yes.
So Alexei, I was going to ask for an expert review at the end.
Okay.
This is part of the.
I don't know if that'll help, right? But so what I'm hearing is we need further discussion. And so in the interest of time, what I would suggest is that we continue for this one, the discussion on the mail.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the feedback. We're looking for people who are aware of these type of things. So I'm really glad you brought that up, and we'll talk about it on list and get as much feedback as we can on it to do it right. And with that in mind, the categories document is the exact same thing. It's another top level document that just lists the categories. And so this is the exact same question as the service discovery document. And so we will discuss this at the same time. Because this is the exact same issue, more or less, just with a different document. So no reason to talk about this now. And we're not talking about this, so this doesn't matter. But if you're interested, this is kind of what a categories document looks like. It just lists all the categories that a ROLIE server provides. So we're not going to talk about this right now because this is going to go to list along with the service document stuff. Okay. Those are the issues that are open. We resolved several of them, and the rest are going to go to list to get more review. So ROLIE is in working group last call, and soon it's going to working group last call. So we need to get as many eyes on this as possible. Anybody who has comments or edits or anything that you care about in this document, we need your feedback. We need your review. You can go to the list, you can go to the GitHub, doesn't matter. Just get your reviews in if you care about it, which I hope you do. It would hurt me if you don't care. We're building ROLIE extensions. We have a CSIRT document here in MILE I'm about to talk about really quick in just a second. And there is a software descriptor extension in SACM. We want more of these extensions. There's a couple more being built by people here. But there's always room for more extensions. There's all these information types that we'd really love to see ROLIE extensions for. And if you are interested in that, and you need any help, anything at all, you can come talk to the authors. We're more than happy to help you put together an extension. You can also follow the current extensions as a template if you want a starting point there. So please come look at ROLIE CSIRT extension draft, which I'm going to go over very quickly because I'm like double over my time. So ROLIE CSIRT is the draft that adds the indicator and the incident information types to ROLIE. This is text and requirements that used to be in the original, I think it was the 02 or 01 version of ROLIE, back when it was designed as an IODEF carrier. And since ROLIE can now carry many different things, the IODEF and CSIRT specific text was pulled out and is now the ROLIE CSIRT extension. So it registers and describes the indicator and incident information types and includes all the normative requirements that went along with using the IODEF format. This was just recently uploaded as a personal draft in the last couple of weeks. See if I have it here. Oh, these are issues for CSIRT. So we would really love to see this document adopted into MILE so we can take a look at it and get it back. Get all that text that was taken out of ROLIE back next to it here in MILE. So that is what we would like to see happen to CSIRT. We added 2 IODEF attributes that were very important in IODEF as categories in the whole category extension point. So purpose and restriction have been exposed as categories in ROLIE entries so that you can, for example, find all of the IODEF entries by their purpose or by their restriction, and it makes it easier to find those things without having to download the IODEF document. If there are other IODEF attributes that make sense as categories, please let us know. Please come to list or whatever else with these so that we can add them as categories in the ROLIE category extension system. And as we talked about earlier in the ROLIE property, which looks like we have support for option 3, we're going to add the IODEF ID and the IODEF date as the first of those ROLIE property exposures so that you can find the IODEF documents by those attributes without having to download the whole thing. Again, if there are other properties that you think are very, very important, crucially important for finding IODEF documents that need to be exposed as properties, please let us know on list or otherwise. We need development help and review for the CSIRT document, as well as the SACM document for software descriptors, if that is something that interests you. This is a brand new document. It's a 0.0 draft that was just uploaded a couple weeks ago. So we'd love to get as much review and support working on that as we can. And you can come open issues on GitHub, come help on issues on GitHub, anything. Dave?
Dave Woltermeyer. So about 80% of the text in this draft is previously adopted text by the working group. So we would certainly like to see this be adopted by the working group as well.
Okay.
So that is the ROLIE CSIRT document. We'd love to see it adopted as soon as possible.
So what I would suggest you do is announce that and solicit feedback in the mail.
Okay.
And we can discuss it from a time perspective. We could call for consensus for adoption at the Chicago meeting.
Okay.
Is that, yeah?
Okay.
Okay. So coming back to the base ROLIE draft.
Yes.
That needs to move forward before we can do the extensions, I think. So for that, you've got the whole list of issues.
That's right. We resolved several of them, so that's good.
Well, right, but you still have a set. So what I had suggested to Alexi, right, was to do an expert review, but I think that should come after we have resolutions for the current issues that we didn't have time to pull here.
Okay.
Right, plus the ones. So just let me know, and through the mail as well, and we'll monitor. But you need to make sure that just because not everybody like me goes through GitHub and looks at the issues, just put them back out on the mail group.
Okay.
And we'll get the discussion going there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be on the mailing list with a bunch of these issues and try and get this sorted up as fast as possible so we can get this out. So if there's not any last questions, comments, concerns, I will end my very long presentation.
That was a very long 30 minutes.
It was a very long 30 minutes. Thank you.
No, but it was good. Thank you. Thank you for making progress on it.
All right.
Oh, I'm next. Okay. Thanks. So you get to run them.
Okay.
You get the button.
So next we have Nancy with XMPP Grid.
Oh, yeah, one second. All right. Good morning. Nancy Kim Winget. I think I only have one slide. So I had 3 or 4 different commenters provide feedback on the XMPP grid. So many thanks for that. A lot of it was clarifications. There was a long discussion on the discovery mechanism, and we debated because I had assumed that the base XMPP grid does talk about the pub sub, but we decided and agreed, I think through the mail reflector, that it would be more explicit if we just referenced that actual extension of the pub sub in the draft. So, oh, thanks. So basically, there were some clarifications, some typos that we fixed in the editorial category. I just mentioned the pub sub. So JEP60 is the extension that describes how the publish subscribe works. We had only cited the XML example for how you do the subscription. We've added how you do both subscription as well as publication. And then added a few more sentences, and I can't remember that, in 2 of the sections where in the overview, I think we said for the extensibility of other potential pub sub mechanisms, because XMPP also may allow for others, just like JEP60 is one extension for pub sub. We needed to allow for that. So we added text to address that set of comments. So that was basically the updates that was done into version 1. Thank you, Chris, for providing feedback on this version. So I'd like to better understand, and we don't have to do it here unless you want to do it with the open mic, of what we need to do to make things more clear, right? So with that, any questions? So next slide, please. So the question is, the author, one of the authors is, do we feel we're ready for this? Should we do another set of last call comments before Takeshi takes it for publication? But that's a question.
It would be useful to get a show of hands to see who has read the draft. So 2. So probably would be useful to get more review. Can I get a show of hands for people who would be interested in reviewing the draft? Stephen?
Thanks.
Adam, thank you. Hank? Okay, so we're trying to move fairly quickly on this. So if you could get your drafts in or your reviews in within the next few weeks, that would be appreciated. Adam said a few days, so you can write that down.
Well, the milestone date said for December. No. The milestone date said December, I think.
Right.
So
that'll give us some time to address any comments.
Mike Jones, Microsoft. Clarification question. Is this the draft that was being referred to in the SEC event discussions earlier this week for the XMPP transport?
It was.
Okay.
It is. It is.
Then I should probably also read it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just realized December is upon us, so
Quick.
we can say end of December. How's that? Okay.
Sounds
thanks.
good. Thank you. Back to you.
Oh, it's back to me. Okay, so with our last presentation, Takeshi, if you raise your hand, I guess I can put you in as the speaker.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, so we may need Meet Echo to come back in to help us with the volume control because you're coming pretty loud.
Okay.
So for now, speak a little softer, Takeshi.
Yes, I understood. So
Okay,
can I
thank you.
start talking? Okay. So thank you very much for providing this remote participation. So this is about JSON binding of IODEF. So next please. So next, please. Sorry. So let me talk about the summary of discussion until now. In the last meeting, I think people are generally in favor of defining the JSON binding. So in the discussion, we have several questions. Generally, the difference between JSON IODEF and IODEF version 2 was unclear. That was the message I received from the people. For instance, I have received 2 questions. Is it going to be a subset or extension? I didn't think I can answer the question last time. I also got a question like this. Keep in mind that XML and JSON contain the same level of expressiveness. So currently, I'm trying to clarify the difference between JSON version and XML version. Apart from that, we had a local discussion in Japan, in ISOC-JP, and we have got several feedback. First one is JSON is often used by programs. It does not need all fields of IODEF. When we want to use all fields, we just use XML. The second comment I got is the concept of IODEF version 2 is maximum flexibility, but JSON version can be different. The third comment I got is IODEF version 2 can carry various data, but it is not easy to write this data in XML. So based on this feedback, I was writing new version. Next page, please. So this is a summary of the difference between JSON version and IODEF version 2. So first of all, JSON version is compatible with IODEF version 2. So what I mean by compatible is it can be converted into IODEF version 2 automatically without any problem. And also, there is no mandatory field for JSON IODEF. Just because JSON does not have attribute or element, it was easier for me to have a design like this. So there is no mandatory field for JSON IODEF. And the JSON IODEF cannot express a type of data that could not be expressed in IODEF version 2. In this way, I mean compatible. At the same time, I think we need to have an extension. Some difference can be necessary when writing JSON. I would like to propose 4 changes. First one is some element name were changed. When I was writing JSON data, it was not so easy to know whether this is an element or array. So if we use array, I want to have a name of the element so that we can see this is an array. Second one is IODEF is semantically great. I like it. But when I write a JSON, I want to make it more compact. So some classes that exist only for semantic consistency is omitted. Third one is some simplified expression is omitted. And fourth one, I would like to introduce profile for JSON version because JSON version does not have mandatory field. Because we do not have any mandatory field, by using profile, we want to have some limitation on the usage of the elements. So next one, please. So some element name were changed. So port was changed to port list in some places. Event data was changed to event data list when the data is supposed to be an array. When I write a JSON, I did not want to look the JSON schema. So it should be more clear whether the data is an array or a value. If I change the name like this, the writer of the document can easily understood whether this is array or not. Next one, please. So some classes that exist only for semantical purpose is omitted. For instance, flow class. This is very understandable. I like this design, but when I write JSON, maybe we could omit it. So, for instance, we had an application header field class that is also the same kind of class, so I omitted. And also signature class, that is just a container as well. Indicator class as well, so I omitted this kind of semantical classes. Next one, please. Also, when I write a port number and IP address, simplified expression should be supported. So for JSON binding draft, I would like to use this kind of simplified expression. Next one, please. Profile. This is something I should design more in detail, but we want to have a profile in order to limit the use of IODEF element. IODEF version 2 can say this field is mandatory or not, but JSON version does not say this version is mandatory or not. So by allowing profile, we could limit the use of the element. One profile we are building is a darknet profile. We are using a darknet incident monitoring. So for this purpose, we were tentatively building a darknet profile in order to demonstrate how we can use profile. So next page, please. So this is an example. I think I have shown this page before in the previous meeting. This is a JSON. So when I would like to write our alert by using the JSON that is directly converted from IODEF version 2, this would be like this. As you can see, we have an empty class such as node. And as you can see, we have IP address and also port number in different places. This is a bit cumbersome for us. So if we use our JSON binding draft, the data structure can be totally different. So if we can take the next page, could you go to the next page, please? One more, please. Yes, if we follow the proposal of this JSON binding draft, the data can be changed like this. It's so simple. I just converted the structure following the rules presented in this presentation. Then everything looks so smart for me. So I hope we want to build the JSON binding draft that can simplify the expression of the data. So could you go on, please? Next page, please. So final question is that I wanted to upload new version to data tracker, but I was not able to judge whether I can upload it as a working group draft or individual draft. We had a poll about the mailing list and no decision was made, but still we have heard several support and no objection was raised. So if it's okay, I would like to upload new version as a working group draft. Thank you.
So Takeshi, there's already a version uploaded, an older one?
Only older one is uploaded.
Okay. So I'd like to get a sense from the room who's actually read the older draft. Nobody. Okay. So Takeshi, I didn't get a show of hands in the room for the old draft. So my suggestion would be, go ahead.
I think in 2 or 3 months ago, we had a kind of discussion on the mailing list whether it could be a working group draft or not. Then the result was something, we had several persons who were supportive, but no objection was raised. So I wanted to know what kind of action was expected by the working group. So I just
Yeah,
follow.
so my suggestion,
Yeah.
my suggestion is go ahead and upload the new version, put it out on the mail list, and let me know. And then as the chair, I can ask for review. Once we get some comments, then we can post a question in the mail group, whether we can get consensus to adopt it as a working group draft.
Okay. Let me just clarify my understanding. I will just upload it as an individual draft again and try to ask,
Yes.
and you will be asking the group whether this could be a working group again later. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I understood.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Nope. Thank you, Takeshi.
Thank you.
Okay, so that leads us to me standing between you and getting to your next activities. Are there any other comments, questions, or issues that we should discuss? I have to ask. Going once? Going twice? All right. Thank you for attending. We'll look forward to Chicago next. Thank you for your help.
You're welcome.
That made it so much easier.
Yeah, I figured it would.